the guideline for the teaching on the family. So we just want to recap what we've done so far and then go quickly to the next section. Could you show it, please? The first time we said 1 + 1 is 1. And that means one male and one female, when they're joined together in matrimony, they still become one. 1 and 1 is 1. That's God's mathematics. And then we looked at the transition between singleness and marriage and said, well, there should be friendship first. You don't immediately go and get married, but you need to get to know the person as a friend. And then dating occurs where you want to get to know the person a bit better because you have some serious intentions to perhaps get married to that person. And then courtship is when it's really serious and when actually you're in the phase of marriage preparation. Betrothal or engagement is when you seal it with, nowadays we do it with a ring. And in former days, in biblical days, they did that with a dowry, where especially the man had to work or had to pay to get his wife. Still happens. In certain places, it still happens. Then you get the wedding, the ceremony itself, and the marriage. What's the difference between the wedding and marriage? Excuse me? Marriage is when you're really living it out. Living out your covenant. You're together, and now you got to make it work. Marriage and wedding is that particular day. The day of the ceremony. For us, the wedding is more important than the engagement. Because in those days, and we know of Mary and other biblical figures, after they were engaged or betrothed, it meant that they already had a covenant. Betrothal meant actually you were married, but you were not living together. It was just as good as marriage. The dowry had been paid, or yes, dowry was paid, and the wife actually belonged to the husband, but he went back to his father's home so that he can build the house, prepare the mansion. And that's where where Jesus said, I'm going to prepare a place for you, and I'm going to come back. And you only could come back when the father gives permission. The father was the one who would check the house or the place where the wife was going to live. And once it was, according to the father, suitable or perfect, then he would give the son permission to go to get his bride to bring her back to the place that he had prepared for her. Now, we place more emphasis on the wedding than on the marriage. You know how much time couples spend preparing and planning and organizing the wedding. And they spend a lot of money also. Lot of money. Thousands. Nowadays a wedding isn't cheap. If you want to have a wedding with a big reception and all the bridal parties and so forth, it's expensive. Now, there's no need for such an expensive wedding. Plan the marriage. Work on the marriage. See, the wedding is just one day. And many people put all their time, all their effort, all their money in the wedding. and after that they're broke, and after that they are at odds with one another because the husband is blaming the wife. How could you have spent so much, and so forth, and they start off on a bad footing. Okay, let's see if this isn't working so well. Just turn it. Give me the next one. Okay. We also listed these definitions to be used. If we're talking about marriage, we have some concepts that are part and parcel. Marriage is a contract, is a covenant. And a covenant is more than an agreement. Later on, we'll just talk a little about covenants. Covenants were made, and actually they were agreements that if the covenant is broken, the person is dead. So can you imagine? Okay, you make this covenant with the family, husband. You make this covenant with the family, and if you break the covenant, they have the right to kill you. That's how it was. So it's a covenant agreement resulting in the moral, physical, spiritual union of man and woman. Then fornication is having sexual intercourse outside of marriage. So according to the Word, according to the Bible, intercourse is for marriage. And we should wait until marriage for intercourse. And this is intercourse, sexual intercourse between two single people. Adultery, or a single person and a married person. For the single person, it's fornication. For the married person, it's adultery. Adultery, when one or both parties are married and they go outside their marriage partner and have intercourse. Divorce, to separate, cut off, drive out, expel, put away, dismiss. That means when the marriage covenant is broken, people separate, they divorce, they don't live together. And these are important concepts that we are going to be dealing with later on. The basic principles regarding marriage, biblical principles, it's a divine institution and includes a divine law, which goes way back to Genesis chapter 2. And marriage, again, we find it supported in the New Testament, in Matthew and in Romans. Fornication and adultery, sinful in God's sight. And there's the scriptures that go with it. God hates putting away. He calls it in Malachi putting away or divorce. And he also hates going to law. That is, all right, we can't get along, and so we're going to go to a judge to settle the case. All right. So we'll come back to these. Then the last time we studied, we looked at the stages in the marriage procedure as we find them in the Bible. First, you got the selection of the bride, and in the Bible times, it was prearranged. The marriages were prearranged. The groom and the groom's father would go to the bride's home and make the arrangements. Says, well, we'd like to have your daughter for our son. And once the agreement is made, then you get the marriage contract. So there and then, as the groom's father or the groom would go to the home of the bride, they would make a contract. Yes, you can have my daughter. yes, it's going to cost you so much, maybe much cattle or what have you, or for instance, in Jacob's case, he had to work 7 years, but there's an agreement made. And once that is made, then the dowry takes place, whether that is in labor or whether that's in money or whether it's in animals, but you got to pay. You don't get your wife so easily. And, then you get the preparation of a place for the groom and the bride to live. So the groom then would start working on the place for his bride to live, preparing, building, and what have you. Once he's finished, then the father would give consent for him to go to get his bride. So let me stick to this one. So the dowry, the betrothal period, which consists of the preparation of the place. So after the contract, and there's this agreement, you can have her, but under these conditions, then the preparation of the place begins. And of course, then you have that waiting period until the groom returns. The preparation of the bride, she prepares herself, and we read that she would make her skin smooth and check her complexion and have a glossy and shiny skin. The apparel, they have to prepare their clothing. The groom would wear a gold crown, and if he was rich, his garments would be scented with myrrh and frankincense. And the bride, she would also get her gown ready, white, spotless. Also, if she was rich, she would wear a crown. And then the groom would return for his bride, and usually that took place at night. That's why they had lamps, and they had to keep their lamps trimmed and ready, because the bridegroom could come at any time. And the groom would leave the father's home with his friends, and there would be a procession towards the bride's home. And on the way, when they got nearer, one of them would call out, "Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Behold, the bridegroom cometh." And that was then the signal for her to get herself dressed quickly and with her bridesmaids and to go out to meet the groom. This is how it actually happened, and this is how Jesus says he's going to return for his bride. Then you got the wedding procession. So the bride and her maids, together with the groom and his friends, would go back now to the father's home, and the wedding feast would begin at the father's home, and this could last for about a week or two, where they just have fun, they enjoy themselves, lots of wine and laughter and so forth and so forth. And then while the others are feasting, the bride and the groom are actually in the bridal chamber, where they are enjoying themselves. And when that's finished, then they would come out and join the party. So that's the biblical way. You have questions? You said really? Well, you see, there was a purpose in that, because that's called where the marriage was consummated, and they would become intimate, and there the groom would then have to determine whether the wife was a virgin